Mansfield and Mates on a Saturday where we kick back and just reconnect with friends and old friends and new friends and would-be friends. I love this part of the show during the week because it gives us a chance just to find out about each other. I don't know how much more there is that I can find out from this particular person because I've interviewed her so many times. I think I've asked her every question I can think of. Ladies and gentlemen, Claire Johnston on Mansfield today.
Jeremy.
Hello, darling.
It's lovely to hear your dulcet tones again.
Claire, we honestly
I haven't seen you for forever.
Yeah, it has sort of been forever in a way, hasn't it? Eh?
Absolutely.
What did you do during that lockdown time?
I did what a lot of people did, a lot of fretting and stressing, a lot of baking, a lot of cooking. Mm-hmm. I'm also proud to say I completed a life coaching course, so at least that's something to show for the whole long time of no performing. So that was a good thing. I feel like that's been a positive.
Since the COVID restrictions have been lifted to a certain extent, has there been any action?
It's been huge amounts of action. It's been absolutely amazing. The action all started again for us last November. That was our first gig in 18 months. And it was incredibly emotional to be together again, rehearsing and then on stage. And then since then, it's been wonderful. We've done all sorts of festivals. As you say, they've been relaxed to a certain extent only. So venues aren't allowed to be full capacity, but we've been doing these festivals where still quite a large number of people and everyone's so just delighted to be together again and to be connecting again. I think that's one of the hugest losses, other than, of course, the people we lost literally to COVID, is that loss of each other and connection. And I think that's so important to what it is to be a human being.
Yeah, I think we're a species that needs to reach out and if not just be tactile, be able to communicate and be able to come together at times, and we didn't have that opportunity, and I just think it was such a pity, really.
It's been brutal, but I think we're coming. I think we really are surely emerging from this thing now, and I suppose we are in a new normal, whatever that means.
Yeah, true. I think quite a few people have found the new normal, and quite a few people have made well of the new normal. And well done to them.
Well done to them indeed.
Now, listen, apart from the gigging and the rest of it, what else is happening in Claire Johnston's life? Let's get a quick catch up here, shall we?
There's not much to report. Just delighted to be feeling a bit more like myself. Now that I'm back to doing what I do, I think a lot of us entertainers really did lose a sense of ourselves during this time. So not only a loss of income, but a loss of a sense of self. So for me, it's just, I'm starting to feel more like myself again. And that's just wonderful, actually. I feel great, actually.
What is it that makes even something like COVID certain groups so resilient and people just want to reconnect with them?
In what sense, resilient?
I think that there are certain groups who have something. What it is, I don't know. But they have something.
You're talking about bands as in music groups.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think with Mango, we've been around so long that we're sort of a bit of an institution, and a definite connection point for people because the music has been to some extent the soundtrack of their lives. And so I think people have wanted to go back to those feelings again. And I think that's where we've been very lucky having had such longevity. I think that really has been a win for us.
Because there are not many bands or artists that have that longevity. You think of Mango Groove, You think of the late Johnny Clegg.
Yes.
You think of maybe, I don't know, Bright Blue, who've now sort of morphed off into something else. But there are groups, bands that were formed mainly sort of late 70s and into the 80s who still managed to pull our heartstrings. I as in just the normal Jeremy walking down the street who wants to have a memory tugged.
I think you've answered your question brilliantly, actually. I think it is to do with a time and a place. And I think you're talking of Johnny, obviously, the amazing Johnny Clegg. That music was very much attached to a time in South Africa's development that was very, very important to all of us, really. And so it has become a touchstone and a connection for all South Africans. And of course, music then was consumed differently. And music lasted, at the time, you'd be on the charts for a very long time. Whereas these days, it's also quick. It all turns around so, so quickly. It's a different beast. I think it's still as important, but we just consume it slightly differently. At the end of the day, what really does connect people is the live concerts. That experience remains the same. That will always be the way, other than ABBA doing the hologram thing, the live concert thing with the people on stage. That will always, I think, be a powerful thing that brings people together.
Were you always a political child, or was there a crossroads, or was there just a general slow movement into expression that came from a political background?
I would say that's a great question. I would say it really started for me when I joined Mango at the age of 17. Having grown up in going to school in the suburbs of the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. It wasn't particularly political, and it was when I joined Mango that I woke up to the reality of the country and what was going on, and sort of tucked away to some extent, but not. That's when my eyes opened, and it was quite an eye-opening thing for me. When I joined the band at 17, Mickey Vilakazi was 64, and he had served in the entertainment corps in World War II, and I was in a band with this sort of jazz great. So it was a real turning point for me. That's when my life really changed.
And how did you manage that change? Because here you are coming from the northern suburbs of Joburg into a totally different culture with totally different people who you weren't allowed to see or communicate with because of laws. How did you actually work that? How did you get through it?
I consider myself at 17 to be a child, to have been a child, and children are adaptive. And I think it was just a question of the music being, again, I keep using the word connection, but the music being the connection between the 64-year-old black man and the 17-year-old white girl. And that is the power of music. And it just became, it's its own language, really. And that's how it was for me, definitely. And just got more and more, as the thing grew, and lots of false starts, lots of difficult times. And then, of course, that album that finally came out in '89, after some setbacks, that was amazing. And sadly, by then, Mickey had passed on. Mickey had died of throat cancer.
Yeah.
So he never got to see, the culmination of what he'd been part of in the beginning.
Yeah. Is it just because people who are in theatre, entertainment, and the arts and that sort of thing are possibly a little bit more wide-eyed than people who are not, that the wide-eyed people tend to see things in a very different way and interpret them in a very different way, And suddenly this wave hits those who are not wide-eyed, and they go, oh, geez, hang on, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, there's something to that, definitely. As much as I didn't come from a political household, I mean, my parents divorced when I was about 8, and my father went back to the UK. And my mum really just was battling just to cope, really, I guess, during those days. So it wasn't a political household at all. But my mum was very open-minded. And so I grew up, I definitely, and you use the word the expression wide-eyed, which I like. So I definitely was that. And if you think of my mum letting her 17-year-old daughter be the only girl back then, the only girl in a band with 6, 7 men, I mean, that was pretty trusting and pretty amazing looking back.
Yeah. Are there any regrets looking back?
Of course, there will always be regrets. Nothing, I'm happy to say nothing terrible, but just, I guess, small business decisions where you sort of think, imagine we'd rather gone that route rather than the one we took. Those sorts of things. And you'll, of course, never know what would have happened had you taken the left rather than the right, or the right rather than the left path. You'll never know. So I think the trick really is to just be happy and grateful for where you are. And I am, especially coming out of COVID, I am at that place in my life where I'm feeling extremely grateful to still be doing something I believe in and I love. And it's been going on for such a long time. I've grown up in the band, really, and it's still going strong. And I'm very, very grateful and happy about that.
Did you ever play an instrument?
I started learning guitar at the age of 15. And I'm this terrible person. If I don't immediately do something really, really well instinctively, I sort of give up. So I can probably play 3 chords on the guitar, but I mean, the whole point with playing an instrument is you have to practice. That's how you get good at it. Whereas singing came easily to me. So I always assumed that you're naturally good at something, that's what you do. But I've learned, no. There's some things you plug away at and it's worth it.
Just
so I have a bit of regret there.
Me and my voice and a tambourine.
Tambourine, one of the most dangerous instruments in the world. That and the woodblock. It cuts through absolutely everything. It should not be used by most people, myself included.
Okay, so what are the short-term plans? I'm sure you haven't got down to planning long-term plans yet. But what are the short-term plans?
Short-term plans, we're working on a couple of what I would only describe as, I guess, legacy projects. So as much as we are writing new material, and that's an ongoing thing, the legacy project would include a documentary, possibly a musical. So those are interesting things that are in the pipeline that we're sort of tinkering away with. And so that's quite exciting. And then, of course, the short term is just more shows, release a few more songs, the usual, the stuff that a band does, I guess, and that we love doing.
Yeah, and suddenly you say things like a show, and you're not talking about just getting up and singing, but a real, what would you call it? You'd call it a sort of docu.
Yes.
Thing.
Yes, there's that sort of thing in the pipeline. So, because the Mango story is so interesting because there are so many interesting people who've been in the band over the years. I mean, I mentioned Mickey earlier on. I mean, he's a fascinating story. And if you think of the unlikely story of these people getting together back in 1985, it is quite a story.
Yeah. It'd be fascinating to see that on stage.
Yes, this will be more of a TV film sort of thing. But you're absolutely right. You could take this all sorts of directions. Exactly.
Yeah. which is what you've got to do at this stage, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess it's what people do, and it's sort of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Looking back to look forward.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. No. I'm just thinking now about those sort of things, and the movies and the theatre productions that have come about as a result of groups, bands, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And some of them have been absolutely spectacular.
No, absolutely right.
And I'd love to see what Mango Groove could come up with in this sort of ilk. Yeah.
It could go in so many different directions. You could go into flights of fancy. You could go into, just telling a story. You could go crazy with it, actually.
Yeah. And you know what? Now's the right time to go crazy with it.
Definitely agree with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for the vote of confidence. It means a lot.
Claire, it's been wonderful talking to you once again. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us on Mansfield today.
Thank you. I've missed you. It's so nice to chat with you again.
Yeah, it has been nice. It's been wonderful. Claire Johnston of Mango Groove right here on Mansfield today. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you'll catch us tomorrow for the gaming show, courtesy of our mates at NAG, and see what is new in gaming on television. Until then, cheerio, bye.